You didn't stumble upon this video by accident. This isn't about algorithms or coincidence. It's a signal, a code triggered the very moment your consciousness crossed the threshold between who you were and who you're about to become. Very few people ever receive messages like this. If you're here now, it's because your frequency answered the call. You know that feeling that something is shifting inside you, even though the world around you still looks the same. That quiet restlessness whispering, there is more. You're not losing your mind, you're waking up. Everything that once seemed like chaos in your life was actually preparation. You're crossing a quantum transition zone, a space where your old self begins to dissolve and the true you starts to emerge. And now it's time to choose. Keep resisting or finally let go. Comment below, I am ready to become who I was born to be. Declare it to the universe. This phrase is your entry key into the new frequency. Jacobo Grinberg wasn't just a scientist. He was an explorer of consciousness. While most researchers confine themselves to treating the brain as a biological machine, Grinberg went further, investigating the invisible boundaries between mind and reality. Through his studies of shamanism, neuroscience, and spirituality, he formulated a bold hypothesis. Reality as we know it isn't fixed, but a projection shaped by the neuronal field, a quantum field that responds to the structure of our perception. According to him, everything we experience is an extension of what we believe, not just in words, but in frequency and vibration. That's why certain messages only reach those who have already achieved a certain level of expansion. The simple fact that you're here now shows that your consciousness has begun to operate on a different bandwidth, one that most people don't even recognize. Grinberg's mysterious disappearance didn't erase his work. On the contrary, his discoveries remain as a map for those ready to walk a different path, the path of reconnection with the mind's true creative power. And now that you stand at this threshold, it's time to move forward, because what comes next isn't theory. It's metamorphosis in practice. Throughout life, many people experience seemingly insignificant events charged with hidden meaning. Little coincidences, phrases that keep appearing, strangely vivid dreams, that constant sense that there is something more happening behind the scenes of reality. For most, these moments pass unnoticed, ignored, or rationalized. But for some, for the few, these signs serve as reminders. Reminders that they're tuned into a frequency most cannot perceive. This phenomenon, Grinberg taught, is not random. It's the result of the vibrational tuning of consciousness. He described a collective mental field where all possibilities exist, but only those with a perceptual structure capable of tuning into it can access them. In other words, it's not the content that changes, but the receiver. And when you start picking up certain messages, patterns, or insights, it's because your internal system is already operating at a higher level. That's why you come across content that seems made just for you. It appears at the exact right time, with the exact right words, articulating what you already felt but couldn't express. This isn't magic, it's resonance. When your consciousness reaches a certain level of maturity, it becomes magnetic to information that matches your new inner state. But why doesn't everyone access this frequency? Because the call isn't imposed, it's silent. It demands sensitivity, surrender, inner openness. Many live so trapped in survival logic, mental noise, and social conditioning that there's no room left to hear this call. The frequency of the new consciousness doesn't compete with chaos, it waits for an opening. When it finds that space, it begins to manifest subtly yet increasingly intensely. You have likely noticed this in your own life. Sudden awakenings, deep connections with strangers, intuitions that prove true, a sense of purpose coming from nowhere. All of this is the result of a shift in tuning, and from that point onward, reality starts responding differently. Coincidences become signs, challenges reveal hidden purposes, and life itself unfolds with an intelligence that transcends ordinary logic. That's why you're here. This video isn't generic content, it's a reminder, a mirror, a quiet acknowledgement that you are ready for another level of existence. Not everyone will understand, not everyone will feel it, but those who do, know. Because this call doesn't come from outside, it comes from within. There comes a moment in life when everything feels uncomfortable, even though on the surface nothing seems to have changed. Conversations that once made sense now feel hollow. Goals that once mattered lose their shine. Routines become burdensome, and a sense of displacement sets in. This isn't an ordinary crisis. It's the beginning of the quantum transition. A deep, silent, inevitable process in which your consciousness starts to break away from the old and seek a new reality frequency. Grinberg described this transition as a perceptual phenomenon. For him, the mental structure that shapes reality is in constant flux. When you begin to receive subtler impressions, notice patterns, and experience things that defy linear logic, it's because your internal structure is reorganizing. You are literally in a perceptual mutation field. And that mutation isn't always comfortable. During this phase, it's common to feel between worlds. On one side, your old self with its beliefs, fears, and conditioning. On the other, a new version starts to emerge, more aligned, freer, more conscious. But it hasn't fully manifested yet. You feel the urge to change, but you don't yet know how. You know what you no longer want, but you can't clearly see what lies ahead. This space of uncertainty is the transition zone. Many give up at this point. They mistake discomfort for failure, confusion for regression, pause for stagnation. But the truth is that all of this is part of energetic recalibration. Just as software needs a restart after an update, your mind must undergo a deconfiguration before it can operate with a new perception system. The problem is, we've been taught to fear this state of not knowing. We've been conditioned to seek quick answers, constant clarity, absolute guarantees. But the quantum field doesn't work that way. It requires faith in the invisible, trust before proof, courage to walk in the dark until the light comes on. Recognizing that you're in a transition zone means accepting that your consciousness is expanding. It means realizing that feelings of inadequacy, internal conflicts, and external upheavals are actually signs that the old no longer serves and the new is being gestated. It's an invisible, silent, often lonely gestation, but absolutely necessary. Once you understand this, anxiety gives way to surrender. Doubt yields to curiosity. Fear transforms into reverence for the process. You're not getting lost. You're realigning. You're moving from the frequency of survival to the frequency of creation. And that changes everything. Few things are as disquieting as feeling like a stranger in your own life, being present but not belonging. Everything stays the same, but you are no longer the same. This is one of the first signs of the consciousness metamorphosis. Unlike a simple phase of change, this transition shakes the foundations of your identity. And with that come symptoms few comprehend, and many mistake for failure, weakness, or mental confusion. One of the most common symptoms is unexplained exhaustion. You sleep, but don't rest. You work, but don't feel fulfilled. You talk, but don't connect. This happens because your energy field is being reorganized. Old beliefs are dissolving, internal structures are collapsing, and your mind is seeking a new reality reference. It's like being caught between a world that no longer makes sense and one that hasn't yet arrived. Another powerful sign is intolerance toward the superficial. Small talk, empty distractions, purposeless commitments, they all begin to feel uncomfortable. This isn't arrogance or sudden detachment. It's simply your soul demanding depth. You can no longer force yourself to stay where your energy doesn't flow with truth. This may lead to ruptured relationships, social distancing, or drastic life changes. And it's all part of the process. Additionally, your emotions intensify. You may cry for no apparent reason, feel sudden anger, or experience moments of inexplicable ecstasy. This isn't emotional instability, it's vibrational purification. Repressed emotions are surfacing to be acknowledged and released. What was once tolerated unconsciously now demands liberation. What was dormant is awakening. Grinberg spoke of the dissolution of the illusory identity, built from conditioning, social expectation, and self-protection. When that identity begins to crumble, you feel like you're losing control. In reality, you're merely shedding what was never truly yours. The discomfort comes not from loss, but from liberation. It's like shedding a skin, not because something's wrong, but because something more authentic is striving to emerge. This process demands courage. Courage not to interrupt the transformation midway, courage to keep going when no one else understands, courage to trust the invisible when everything seems uncertain. Because it's precisely in these moments of internal collapse that a new frequency begins to establish itself, not one imposed from outside, but the one that has always been within you, waiting for the right moment to manifest. So, if you're feeling all this, there's nothing wrong with you. On the contrary, it means you're ceasing to be what you were taught to be and starting to become who you really are. What if I told you that your most powerful version already exists and is in contact with you right now? Not as a distant fantasy, but as an active presence, a higher consciousness that guides you silently through intuitions, inspirations, and synchronicities. This is the central premise of one of the most transformative ideas about consciousness, the future self. Grinberg asserted that reality is shaped by mental fields that extend beyond linear time. Past, present, and future coexist in the field of consciousness, and it is both possible and necessary to connect with versions of yourself that already inhabit higher realities. Your future self is exactly that, an expression of you that has already overcome today's dilemmas, achieved the results you desire, and lives at the frequency you're now learning to sustain. But how does this work? Through resonance. When you access a thought that expands you, when you feel an inexplicable certainty about the path to take, or when you receive an insight that seems to come from nowhere, you're in contact with your future self. It doesn't communicate in direct words, but in vibration. You sense its presence as sudden clarity, uncommon motivation, or that feeling of, this is it. Often, what you call inspiration is actually an energy download from the version of you already living the life you desire. This interdimensional collaboration happens more often than you think, but you only notice it once you begin to quiet the internal noise of doubt, fear, and conditioning. As you learn to trust what you feel more than what you can prove, you make room for this contact to intensify. And why is this important now? Because your current expansion depends on the courage to act as someone who already is who they want to be. This doesn't mean pretending or self-delusion, but choosing actions inspired by your future self. Choose more courage, speak more truth, walk with deeper purpose. Every choice you make in resonance with your higher version accelerates the collapse of this new reality. Your future self is already collaborating with you. It sends signals every day, especially in the moments you fall silent and listen. It shows up in the ideas that excite you, in the visions that uplift you, in the sensations that align you. The more you respond to these signals with action and presence, the clearer this connection becomes. You don't need to create this new you. It already exists. Your only task now is to align with it, become compatible with your own greatness. And that begins by choosing to feel, think, and act as someone who already knows they can sustain the life they wish to live. Most people believe that manifesting something requires time, effort, and worthiness, that you must struggle, earn merit, or wait for the universe's permission. But that's a scarcity-based separation mindset. From the quantum perspective, advocated by scholars like Jacobo Grinberg, this view is not only limiting, but mistaken. The truth is simple, though uncomfortable for the conditioned mind. What you desire already exists now. In the quantum field, all possibilities coexist simultaneously. Abundance, health, love, freedom. They're all vibrating as potentials ready to be accessed. What separates you from what you desire isn't time, distance, or luck. It's frequency. Imagine reality as a radio station and your mind the tuner. If you're vibrating scarcity, you tune into experiences that confirm scarcity. If you vibrate abundance, you begin to notice paths, opportunities, and situations that were always available, but were previously outside your perceptual tuning. This explains why so many, despite enormous effort, can't change their reality. They try to manifest something new without shifting their own frequency. It's like trying to hear a different song without changing the station. Manifestation doesn't happen through desire, it happens through alignment, and alignment is achieved internally before any external change. But how do you align with something that hasn't yet appeared? The answer lies in two key elements: feeling and conviction. You must allow yourself to feel now what you assume you'll feel only when the outcome arrives. This is counterintuitive because we've been taught to react to circumstances, not to create them from our internal state. But quantum reality responds to who you are, not to what you hope for. Grinberg showed that consciousness shapes the neuronal field, and this field reorganizes external reality according to the internal structure of perception. Simply put, what you expect with conviction becomes the vibrational blueprint the field translates into reality. That's why visualization alone isn't enough. You must go beyond mental imagery. Feel it. Breathe as if it's already real. Act as though you've already received. Emotional conviction is the code that unlocks manifestation. The universe doesn't respond to doubt. It responds to certainty. If you can hold that state even before the evidence appears, you will have accessed the reality collapse point, where manifestation ceases to be a hypothesis and becomes inevitable. It's not about attracting something distant. It's about recognizing what's already yours and tuning your vibration to match it. Manifestation isn't a rare miracle. It's the natural function of an awakened mind, and you are closer to operating from that place than you realize. You've likely felt this before. Some days everything flows, conversations click, opportunities unfold, and time seems to bend in your favor. Other days everything stalls. No matter how hard you try, nothing moves. The difference between these two states isn't external circumstances, it's your internal coherence. And that's where the true secret of manifestation lies: energetic coherence. Coherence is the state in which your thoughts, emotions, and actions vibrate in harmony. When mind, body, and soul align with the same intention, your energy field becomes unified and magnetic. It's as if the universe, sensing this clear, consistent signal, reorganizes everything around you to reflect that vibrational clarity. Not because you're forcing it, but because you're transmitting a code that cannot be ignored. Grinberg spoke of consciousness as the structuring force of reality. And he said that the more coherent a person's perceptual structure, the more precise and stable the reality they experience. In plain terms, the more you believe, feel, and act in truth about a given state of being, the more inevitable its manifestation becomes. That's why repeating affirmations is useless if you're vibrating doubt inside. Visualizing abundance won't work if you live in fear of loss. The mind can say one thing, but the energy field doesn't lie. That's why so many manifestation attempts fail. What you claim to want doesn't match what you're actually vibrating. Coherence begins with honesty. Ask yourself, does this desire expand me or fill a void? Am I seeking to prove something to the world or express who I truly am? When desire comes from truth, the whole body responds. There's lightness, trust, and peace. That is coherence. How do you cultivate it? Through the conscious repetition of small acts that confirm your new identity. When you start acting like someone who already is what they wish to be, even in simple details like breathing, walking, or posture, your field begins to align, not by performance, but by inner recognition. Coherence isn't perfection, it's vibrational integrity. It's the state where you don't need to convince yourself because every part of you already knows it's true. In that state, there is no internal conflict. And when there is no conflict, energy flows. And when energy flows, reality responds. You don't need to strive to become who you already are. You simply need to remove what's blocking that expression. When you allow your truth to flow unafraid, coherence takes hold. And with it, manifestation becomes natural, inevitable, and effortless. Now that you understand your consciousness not only interprets the world but projects it, the question remains, what will you do with this power? Knowledge alone doesn't transform, action does. And action begins in the invisible. Your frequency, the way you choose to think, feel, and behave from this moment forward. You're not here by accident. Every word that reached you, every sensation awakened within you, reflects your readiness. The frequency has been activated, your future self is in motion, and it waits for only one thing, your permission to be embodied right now. From today on, walk as one who knows, speak as one who already is. Decide as one who no longer waits for external permission. Your future self is already at work, and with every conscious choice you make, you can collapse that reality into being. If this video resonated with you, subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell to keep receiving content that sustains this new vibration. And share this video with someone who, like you, is ready to stop merely surviving and start creating. You are no longer who you were, and the world is already beginning to respond to that truth.